Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
Naomi took the money on a Wednesday. I didn't even know it was gone until Friday night, when I tried to transfer rent from savings and saw the hole. $18,700 gone like a pulled drain plug. I called her, of course. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Same. By Saturday, her cell was disconnected. A bartender from Cedar Ridge posted a photo with her on his Facebook page, both of them grinning in a parking lot like they'd just robbed a bank. Which they had, in a way. That was the year I was 36. I'm 58 now, but I still remember how heavy my boots felt when I walked back into that half-duplex. I'd remodeled myself out on the edge of Brimfield. Before we start, share in the comments how's your day going and where you're joining from. And let's continue. My name's Rick Kessler. I drove a box truck for All County Beverage back then. 16-foot rig, mostly local deliveries. I wasn't in tech, or construction, or management. I hauled soda and beer and sometimes cheap wine across 4 counties and got home smelling like syrup and diesel. I'd kick off my steel toes at 6:40 most nights, sit in the old plaid chair by the door, and take a long pull from a bottle that didn't taste like anything after the 3rd swallow. There was always a buzz behind my eyes by the time I got up to heat a frozen dinner. Or not. The place looked like what it was. A halfway home for a man too stubborn to admit he'd been wrecked. Mail piled like sand dunes on the end table. A busted lamp leaned against the wall. And the bookcase I started before Naomi left? It was still there, still slanted, like it didn't believe in me either. I told myself I'd get my act together after Christmas. Then I pushed it to after my birthday in March. Then maybe once softball season picked back up. Mornings were a whole other punishment. I'd wake up with my mouth dry, shuffle to the mirror, count out 4 ibuprofen, and say today, like it meant something. It didn't. My folks? Gone. Dad left when I was 5. Mom floated between boyfriends and bars. I learned early how to tie my own shoes and stop asking questions. The only people who ever showed up for me were Harold and June Mercer, old couple who lived across the alley, both retired post office. June had a habit of leaving casseroles on my stoop with handwritten notes taped on top. Heat at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. Like she thought I needed directions for life. She wasn't wrong. I kept busy with my roots. Tuesdays were fairgrounds. Thursdays the winery. Fridays were for grocery warehouses. Big orders, bad forklifts, long hours. But the real weight was always waiting at home. The silence in that duplex didn't come all at once. It settled, slow and steady, like a wet coat that never dried out. Some nights I'd talk out loud just to hear my voice. Dumb stuff, sports, weather, grocery lists I never wrote down. That ring? Hers. I kept it in the drawer by the stove for reasons I couldn't explain back then. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was proof I hadn't imagined her. Probably both. By October, I knew exactly how deep I'd fallen. It wasn't just the money or the drinking. It was the knowing that I'd built this whole little rut with my own 2 hands and still managed to trip face first into it. One night, I dropped a frozen meal on the kitchen floor and just stood there watching it steam through the plastic. Didn't even pick it up. Just stared at it until the microwave beeped again like it was disappointed in me too. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed hungry. That was the night I said today in the mirror and didn't believe myself at all. A few days later, the rain came down sideways. Under the blinking billboard by the bus stop near the thrift store, I saw a woman and a boy tucked into a damp blanket. She kept her chin high. The kids' socks were wrong side out. "You two have somewhere warm?" I asked. She shook her head once. "I've got a place with heat and clean towels," I said before I could overthink it. I set my spare key in her hand and gave the address. "Use the hall closet. I'll be back after my route." "We won't touch what's not ours," she said. "Name's Ray. This is Toby." "Rick," I said. "Just stay dry." I finished my run and headed home. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say much. Just set the bag down on the counter and took off my jacket, water dripping from the hem onto the tile. The smell of onions hit first, rich, warm, like something from a real kitchen, not a bachelor's freezer. For a second, I thought I walked into the wrong house. Toby peeked at me from behind the blanket, eyes wide like I might disappear if he blinked. I nodded at him, and he nodded back. One of those serious kid nods, like a contract had been signed. Ray stirred the pot like she'd done it 1,000 times, but I could tell she was nervous. Shoulders tight, back too straight. She didn't say anything about me leaving the key, didn't ask questions. Just said, "We found towels in the hall closet. Hope that's okay." "Everything's fine," I said. "Better than it's been in a long time." She glanced at me quick, like she was checking if I meant it or if I was being polite. I meant it. I just didn't know how to say more without sounding like a complete fool. The place felt warmer, not just because of the food or the people. The air didn't have that old dead weight anymore. The silence that used to hang in the corners was gone. Even the leaning bookcase looked like it was standing up a little straighter. Toby sipped his chocolate milk like it was some sacred event. He didn't slurp or spill a drop, just held the carton in both hands and drank it slow. I handed him an orange and a plastic dinosaur I found in the bag of yard sale junk by the door. He grinned but didn't say anything, just held it up and nodded again. Ray turned the burner to low, wiped her hands on a dish towel and said, "I used a little of that meat from the freezer. Hope that's all right. I can replace it when I get a few bucks." "You don't owe me anything," I said. "That food wasn't getting used anyway. I've been mostly eating garbage." She didn't laugh, but her mouth pulled into a little half smile. "Still," she said, "I'd like to earn our keep. I can clean, cook. I've done housekeeping work before." "You don't have to prove anything," I said. "Just stay dry, stay warm." She nodded and turned back to the stove. The way her shoulders dropped, just a little, told me how hard she'd been holding herself up all day. Toby finally broke his silence. "You got more movies?" His voice was small but hopeful, like asking might make them real. "I got a few," I said. "Mostly old stuff." "Old's fine," he said. "Cartoons?" "Couple. Think there's one with a talking toaster." "That's funny," he said, settling back onto the couch like it was made of gold. Ray served up the stew in 2 of the mismatched bowls I'd had since my first apartment. She gave Toby the one without the chip. Hers was the one with the faded stripes. Mine had a crack down the side, but I didn't care. I hadn't had a hot meal with someone else at the table in over a year. We ate with the sound of an old DVD menu looping in the background, Toby humming along like it was a song he knew. Ray didn't talk much while she ate, but she glanced around the room like she was taking stock. Not judging, just observing, seeing where she landed. After we cleaned up, which didn't take long, she asked if she could sweep. I told her she didn't have to, but she said it helped her think. So she swept. Carefully, like each dust bunny was a decision. I handed her the trash bag, and she tied it off with that practiced flip people do when they've had to clean too many places that aren't theirs. Toby curled up on the couch with a pillow and one of my old sweatshirts. He was out cold before the second cartoon started. Ray stood over him for a minute, brushing his hair back with her fingers, then stepped into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked. "With what?" "Us being here, tonight?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure. More sure than I've been about most things." She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath since the billboard. "Okay, just making sure." I reached under the sink, pulled out a box of dryer sheets I hadn't touched in months, and offered them to her. "They still smell all right. You can use the laundry tomorrow if you want." She took them like they were rare treasure. "Thank you," she said, and her voice caught on the word like it didn't get used often. The power blinked once from the wind, but held. I walked over, turned off the living room light, and grabbed the spare quilt from the closet. Ray settled on the recliner, covered herself up, and said, "We'll be out of your hair soon." "You're not in my hair," I said, and sat down across from her. She didn't respond, just closed her eyes, hands folded on her chest like she was guarding something precious. The rain kept tapping the windows. I stayed up a while, Not because I was worried, they weren't going to steal anything, but because the house felt right. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was soft, almost peaceful. At some point, I must have nodded off, because the next thing I knew, it was morning, and the smell of coffee and toast was already moving through the place like it had always belonged here. The next few mornings started with the smell of toast instead of the sting of hangover sweat. Ray moved through the kitchen like she'd lived there 10 years, soft-footed but efficient, warming coffee in a pot I'd forgotten worked, and reminding Toby to put his socks on right side out. By the third day, there was a rhythm. I'd leave around 6:15 with a clean thermos and a sandwich wrapped in foil. Come back at sunset, boots sore, shoulders tight, and there'd be something on the stove. Sometimes real dinner, sometimes just hot dogs and boxed mac, but it beat microwaved nothing. Toby took to sitting at the table with his building blocks, making quiet little towers with laser focus. After dinner, we'd stack pieces together. He liked to make train depots and I'd try bridges. He didn't laugh right away when something was funny. He waited, like he had to be sure it was safe. One night I noticed the bottles were gone from the end table. I found them shoved way back in the pantry behind some rice and cans. It had been 8 days and I hadn't touched a drop. Didn't even miss it. June caught me on the alley and handed over a foil-covered pan of baked ziti. "You look better in the eyes," she said, squinting up at me. "Less cloud, more blue." Ray picked up small jobs, laundry at 2 houses near Birch Street, sweeping and scrubbing. Said she was used to that kind of work, and folks tipped better when you didn't talk too much. She got hired part-time at the thrift store by the bus station. Came home with a coat for me that still had the security tag on it. "Cost me $8, she said. "Tags just for show." She got gloves for Toby, too, those kind that clip at the wrists, and a scarf that didn't match but kept the wind off his neck. We didn't talk much about money, but I slipped a $20 bill into her coat pocket one morning before I left. She never said anything, but 2 days later I came home to beef stew and warm bread. 10 days in, I finally opened a stack of old mail that had been collecting near the fridge. Most of it was junk or past due notices I already knew about, but one envelope made my stomach clench. IRS letterhead, addressed to both me and Naomi. I opened it slow. Inside, notice of federal tax lien. Joint return filed last spring. I hadn't filed anything. I carried the envelope across the alley and knocked on Harold's screen door. He was in his recliner with the ball game muted. Took one look at my face and said, "What's the damage?" I handed him the letter. He reached for his reading glasses, put them on, and read it twice before setting it on the armrest like it might explode. "That's a lien notice, son," he said, calm as if he was telling me it might rain tomorrow. "You better call Monday. Don't sit on that." I sat in the plastic chair on his porch and stared at the quiet street. I could feel it, low in my gut. Naomi still yanking strings from whatever dive bar she was holed up in. I didn't even know what the penalty was for fake joint returns, but it felt like something you could go to jail over. Harold reached for the cooler by his feet and pulled out a root beer. "You ain't the first man screwed by a ghost with your last name. You just make sure she's the last." That same night, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in over a year. Derek. My younger brother, full of opportunities and half-finished projects. His text said, "You want to sell Granddad's land near the creek? Could get $19,200 fast." Just like that. "No, how's it going? No, sorry about your ex." I didn't answer right away. Walked out to the alley, kicked at some loose gravel, stared up at the power lines. That little quarter-acre wasn't worth much on paper, but it was all that was left of our family that hadn't been pawned off or forgotten. I typed back, "Let me think about it," which was code for, "I don't want to deal with this crap right now." That weekend, Ray made a pot of chicken and rice big enough to last 4 days. "We'll stretch it to Thursday," she said, like it was a bet she planned on winning. Toby helped stir, tongue sticking out like he was threading a needle. Sunday night, I pulled out an old cardboard box I hadn't touched since Naomi left. Inside were some old tools, loose screws, and a few kids' books I'd picked up years ago at a flea market, thinking I might donate them. I found one about trains. Big color pictures, thick pages, one of those books that smells like crayons and glue. Toby crawled up next to me on the couch, his socks mismatched and his head still damp from bath time. I started reading in my regular voice, expecting to fumble or slur, but the words came out clear, steady. Ray leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, not saying anything, but she didn't leave either. By the third page, Toby's head was on my arm. By the sixth, he was asleep. I didn't move, didn't want to. The furnace clicked on, and the warm air hit just right. I stared at the page I'd stopped on, a red caboose under a sunset sky, and thought, maybe I can do it different this time. Not perfect, not flashy, but better. I knew the IRS was still waiting. Derek would keep poking. And Naomi, well, she could show up any minute like a tornado in heels. But right then, in that quiet living room, with a sleeping kid and Ray wiping counters like she owned the place, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. It was one of those gray Wednesdays that never wake up. I was standing at Higgins' grocery checkout, buying flour, canned soup, and a bag of apples, when the cashier leaned forward and said, "She was asking about you." I thought she meant June, or maybe the delivery rep from the distributor. "Who?" I asked, sliding a 20 across the counter. "Naomi," she said, casual as reading a price tag. "About 20 minutes ago. Said she used to live out your way." My hands went cold, the kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads down your arms. The cashier asked if I wanted my receipt, but I was already walking out, leaving the flour behind. The drive home felt longer than usual, every red light lasting an hour. When I pulled into the driveway, the living room light was on, glowing through the curtains like a warning. The front door was cracked open. I pushed it wide, heart pounding, and there she was. Naomi, sitting on my couch like she'd never left, one leg crossed over the other, hair darker now, face sharper, smile still the same, half smug, half challenge. "Miss me?" she said, like it was funny. Her eyes drifted to the coat hooks by the door. "Company?" she asked, dragging out the word like it tasted bad. My throat tightened. "Where are they?" She tilted her head, that old performance she did when she wanted control. "They left. Didn't look like they belonged." I took 2 steps forward. "What did you say to them, Naomi?" She shrugged, digging a fingernail into the seam of the couch cushion. "Just told them the truth. That this is my house. My husband. And they were temporary." The trash bag near the kitchen was split open, contents scattered, cans, envelopes, Ray's folded laundry. My stomach turned. It wasn't just about the mess. It was the invasion. She'd always known how to make destruction look justified. "Get out," I said, low and steady. She laughed, not loud, just enough to say she still thought she was winning. "You're not even divorced. Legally, this is still my place too." I didn't respond, just grabbed my keys and walked out, her voice following me down the steps. "You'll come running back," she called. "You always do." Not this time, the rain slanting hard across the windshield. I checked the thrift store first, closed, lights out. Then the bus station, where 2 guys were arguing over a cigarette under the awning. Nothing. My pulse hammered in my throat. I hit the diner by the truck stop, windshield wipers smearing more than clearing. Through the window, I saw them. Ray hunched in a corner booth, Toby coloring a rabbit on a kid's placemat, tongue sticking out in concentration. When I walked in, the bell over the door jingled like it didn't belong in a place that heavy. Ray looked up. Her face went from guarded to broken in one heartbeat. "She said she was your wife," she whispered when I reached the booth. "Said we were playing house in her home. Said you'd tell us to leave when you remembered who you really were." Toby glanced up, confused by the tension. "She said that?" he asked. "Yeah, buddy," I said, kneeling beside him. "She did, but she's wrong." Ray's eyes were red, not from tears, but from the kind of anger that burns quiet. "I didn't know what to believe," she said. "I thought maybe you didn't tell me everything." "I told you what mattered," I said. "Naomi left 18 months ago. She took my savings and every bit of peace I had. I don't owe her another word." The waitress came over, setting down a pot of coffee. "You folks okay?" "We're good," I said, and meant it. "Just getting ready to head home." Toby tugged at my sleeve. "We can go home?" His voice cracked a little on the word home, like he was testing how real it could sound. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "We can." Ray hesitated, looking at the door like she half expected Naomi to appear there next. "She had a key, Rick," she said. "She went through everything." "I'll change the locks," I said. "Tonight." Back at the duplex, Naomi was gone, but her smell, cheap perfume and cold smoke, still hung in the air. The curtains fluttered from where she'd probably thrown them open to see what she could claim. Ray stepped in behind me, slow, holding Toby close. "You sure about this?" she asked. "I'm sure," I said, heading straight for the hall closet where I kept the toolbox. I pulled out a new lock set I'd bought months ago and never used. My hands were steady this time. I removed the old lock, dropped it into the trash, and turned the new key in the door. The click felt final. Toby wandered over to the couch, holding his toy train, looking small in the big room. "She said bad stuff about you," he said. I knelt down beside him. "People who do bad things like to make others look worse," I said. "But you saw how we live. You know what's true." He nodded once, satisfied with that answer. Ray went to the kitchen, started gathering the scattered mail. "She cut open the bag with a knife," she said quietly. "Who does that?" "Someone who thinks chaos makes them important," I said. "But not anymore." We ate the last of the chicken and rice for dinner, mostly in silence. Rain still poured outside, hitting the windows hard enough to sound like static. When I stood to wash the dishes, Ray stopped me with a hand on my arm. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your peace again," she said. "You're the reason I found any," I said, and it came out without thinking. She didn't answer, just gave a small nod and turned off the kitchen light. Toby had already fallen asleep on the couch, his little hands curled around the toy train. I sat there a long while after they went to bed, watching the rain streak the window, listening to the quiet hum of the furnace. I knew Naomi wouldn't give up that easy. She never did. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel cornered. I felt ready. Naomi showed up again the next morning like a rerun that refused to end. I heard her car door slam just after 7, and before I could finish tying my boots, she was already inside, holding a mug of my coffee like it was hers. She always did that, claimed space before anyone could tell her no. She leaned against the counter, casual as you please, and said, "We're still legally married, Rick. You know what that means? It means I still have rights. To the house, to what's inside it, even to whatever borders you're hiding under my roof." I took a slow breath. "You mean Ray and her kid?" Naomi smirked, sipping the coffee she didn't make. "If that's what you're calling them. Doesn't matter. Legally, I could have the sheriff down here today to clear them out." I leaned on the counter opposite her, arms crossed. "You're bluffing." She tapped her nail on the edge of the mug. Click, click, click. "You think so? That little IRS letter says otherwise. You owe back taxes because I filed our return last spring. Joint return. We're still a joint entity until a judge says we're not." My stomach tightened. "I never signed anything." She rolled her eyes. "Signatures are just formality now. Everything's online. Maybe next time don't leave your passwords where I can find them." Something shifted inside me right then. Not anger, not yet, but a kind of tired that went deeper than sleep. I realized she'd been rehearsing this speech for days, maybe weeks. She'd waltzed back in just to see if she could still pull my strings. "Get out," I said. She tilted her head, fake surprise on her face. "That's not how this works." I'll call a lawyer, maybe the sheriff too. Tell them you've got squatters here. Maybe even that you're hiding income or helping that girl launder cash through her little job at the thrift store. That was her thing. Mix half-truths with poison, then smile while she watched it burn. Something in my chest flipped. I wasn't scared anymore. I was bored, completely done with the theater of it. I picked up my phone, turned the screen down, and hit record. "Say that again," I told her. "All of it." She blinked, then grinned, thinking she still owned the stage. "Which part? The one where I remind you you're still married, or the part where I tell you you're breaking about a dozen laws letting that woman stay here?" "All of it," I said. "Slow." She did. Every venomous syllable. She even repeated herself twice, slower the second time, like she wanted to make sure I understood the lesson. When she finished, she waited for me to crack. That was the game. She pushed until I lost my footing, then acted shocked when I exploded. But this time I didn't explode. "The house," I said, "means less to me than peace. You can have it. I'll walk before I let you poison another morning in here." That hit her. I saw it in the way her jaw twitched. She wanted a fight, a begging scene, a show. She didn't know what to do with indifference. I picked up the IRS letter from the table and folded it clean. "You've got 7 days," I said. "Take what's yours from a list I'll make. The rest goes in boxes. I'll hold them for 30 days. After that, it's gone." Naomi laughed, sharp and thin. "You're not serious." "Dead serious," I said, sliding the phone into my pocket. "And this time, I've got proof." Her smile fell, the real kind of fall, not the fake one. She knew exactly what I meant. I opened the front door and held it there. She stared at me for a beat too long, then brushed past, muttering something about me not knowing who I was dealing with. When the door shut, I didn't feel relief, just silence. Heavy, but clean. I crossed the alley to Harold and June's house. June answered the door before I could knock twice, hair still in curlers, apron already on. "What's wrong?" she asked, no small talk. "Can I talk to Harold?" I said. He came to the door in his slippers, holding a half-eaten piece of toast. "You look like somebody kicked your truck," he said. I told them everything, from the IRS letter to the recorded conversation to the way Toby called my couch so soft before he fell asleep last night. June's face went hard by the middle of it. Harold just nodded like he was taking inventory of a bad situation. When I finished, June crossed her arms. "You three can stay here till the dust settles," she said, tone flat, final. "Don't even start with pride, Rick. You'll just make more work for yourself." I started to protest, but she raised one eyebrow. "You heard me?" Harold asked. "You got copies of everything?" "Not yet," I said. "The IRS letter, the recording, everything's still on my phone." "Then let's fix that," he said, leading me toward the den. He flicked on a lamp, dust floating in the beam, pulled the cover off his old flatbed scanner like he was unveiling a relic. "This thing still works. Might take a minute to warm up." He booted up a beige desktop computer that hummed like a refrigerator. "Send that file from your phone to my email," he said. "We'll burn it to a disk too, paper and digital both. You don't leave your only copy on something that can fall in a sink." June brought us coffee and stood behind my chair, reading the IRS letter over my shoulder. "She forged your name?" "Looks that way." She exhaled slow. "Then she's done hanging herself. You just need to hand her the rope." Harold grinned. "She thinks she's smarter than the county clerk. Most folks do, right before the clerk proves them wrong." I spent the next hour scanning everything. Bank statements, return envelopes, Naomi's old letters with her handwriting, even the scratched-up checkbook she left behind. Each file got labeled, printed, and filed into one of Harold's manila folders. He treated it like a crime scene, gloves metaphorically on. When we finished, he turned the scanner off and said, "You need to protect that girl and the kid. They don't need to be in the crossfire." I know, I said. That's why I'm taking them out of the house tonight. June nodded, satisfied. I'll get the spare room ready. Harold, grab the extra blankets from the closet. Ray didn't argue when I told her. She just looked at me with that calm, worn expression she had when life took another swing. Whatever you think is best, she said. We'll be ready. As I packed a bag with her and Toby's things, I caught sight of Naomi's coffee mug still on the counter, lipstick stain dried on the rim. I thought about smashing it. Instead, I set it in the sink, turned on the tap, and let the water run until the stain disappeared. When we crossed the alley that night, the air was cold enough to bite, but it felt cleaner on the other side. June had the porch light on and the door open before we hit the steps. "Come on in," she said. "You're home for now." And for the first time in a long while, I believed her. By 8 that morning, Ray already had half her stuff in a duffel. She folded fast and didn't talk much, like she'd done this before and knew the routine. Toby helped by putting socks into a lunchbox, like he was packing for a vacation. We filled 2 bags and 1 laundry basket, his toys, her clothes, a couple framed photos she kept tucked in a book. And that was it. The 3 of us crossed the alley with what little we owned now. Harold opened the side door before I knocked. The spare room smelled like cedar and lemon polish, like someone cared enough to keep it ready. June had made the bed with a quilt that looked older than Toby, but softer than anything in the duplex. Naomi didn't come outside. She stayed in the duplex, sending me texts full of phrases like equitable distribution and good faith, like she'd picked them off the back of a cereal box. One said I was withholding joint property in bad conscience. Another told me I had 7 calendar days to comply. I didn't reply to any of them. I focused on getting my own house in order. That meant paperwork, phone calls, and finding out how deep Naomi's claws still went. Of course, that's when Derek decided to pile on. He called while I was standing in line at the post office, said he had a time-sensitive buyer for Granddad's 1/4 acre by the creek. "They're offering 19.2, Rick. That's real money for land we're not using." I told him I needed time to think. He responded like I'd shot his dog. "Time? It's a dirt lot with thorns and 2 dead trees. You're letting pride screw us out of cash." I said I'll think about it, I repeated, but he kept talking over me until I hung up. That afternoon I headed to the library downtown. The place smelled like paper and old carpet. I used the public scanner to upload copies of everything. IRS notice, driver logs, the audio transcript Harold typed up, word by word, with his 2 good fingers. The librarian gave me a USB stick for $1 and showed me how to save everything in one folder. From there, I walked 2 blocks to the sheriff's office. The clerk at the front desk was a man about my age, gray in the beard, no nonsense. I handed over the envelope and said, "My wife filed taxes in my name last year without my signature. I think it qualifies as identity theft." He flipped through the papers, didn't say much, just nodded every few seconds. "All right," he said finally, reaching for a thick packet from under the desk. "You'll want to fill this out. It's got the intake forms, affidavit, and the list of what we'll need if it goes to the DA." The packet was the size of a phone book. I took it, thanked him, and sat in the waiting area for 20 minutes filling out the basics. Later that day, I stopped at the credit union, where Naomi and I used to have a joint account before she drained it. I asked to speak with the branch manager, a woman named Carla, who wore her hair in a perfect twist and had a voice like a guidance counselor. I told her I'd found a loan in my name from 18 months ago, a used car I never saw. "My name's on it," I said, "but I didn't sign it." She pulled up the account, printed out the application, and slid it across the desk. I looked at the signature line and felt my stomach drop. My name was there, perfectly spelled, but the K in Kessler was wrong. Naomi always made her Ks like fish hooks, and that's exactly what this one looked like. "This was faxed in," Carla said, pointing at the timestamp. "No in-branch signature, and the account was flagged for suspicious activity about 4 months later, but it wasn't followed up on. I nodded slowly. Can I file a fraud report? Absolutely, she said. We'll cooperate fully. I'll flag the loan and make sure collections get the update. I walked 2 blocks to the park after that, sat on a bench near the duck pond and just stared at the gray water for a while. No pacing, no phone in hand, just air. Back at the Mercers that evening, Ray had dinner ready. Tacos made from ground turkey, a can of beans, and some leftover rice she crisped in the pan like she was feeding royalty. Toby made me a paper crown out of construction paper and staples, handed it to me with a grin and said, "You're king of the snow shovels now." I put it on and wore it through dinner, no shame. Afterward, I helped him sort puzzle pieces while Ray washed dishes. She didn't ask about the sheriff's office or the loan application. She didn't need to. She gave me a long look from the sink, steady, calm, and nodded like she trusted I was doing what needed doing. That night, I slept on the cot beside the bed instead of the couch. For the first time in over a decade, I fell asleep without a drink, without noise, without that bolt of panic I'd learned to brace for. I woke up at 6 sharp with Toby snoring on the bed above me and the sound of June's percolator burbling in the kitchen. Something was shifting. Not fast, but real. Next came the whispers. Naomi didn't come back in person. She took the show on the road instead. I started hearing things through back doors and grocery aisles. According to Brimfield's latest episode of Telephone, I was hiding a woman, hiding money, hiding from my responsibilities. One guy at the gas station said, "Heard your girlfriend's living rent-free while your wife handles the legal side," like he was talking about a soap opera and not my actual life. 2 days later, I came home from my route and found a Greene County sedan idling in front of the duplex. 2 men in windbreakers stood under the drooping porch roof, clipboards in hand. Code enforcement. One of them, tall, round in the shoulders, asked, "You the owner?" "Joint owner," I said, pulling out my key. "Or ex-joint, depends how this shakes out." He gave a tight nod. "Got a tip about improper occupancy. Want to take a look inside?" I let them in. The living room smelled stale again without Ray's cooking. The trash had piled up since we left. One porch light was out, and the water heater panel in the basement was half detached from where Naomi must have kicked it. I walked them through, kept my tone neutral, explained I was staying at the Mercers temporarily while handling a domestic dispute. They scribbled some notes, asked if the house was a rental, it wasn't, and left with a polite warning about clutter, standing water in the crawl space, and making sure any new residents were formally documented. I thanked them and shut the door behind them a little too hard. At work the next morning, Mr. Delgado called me into the office between unloading bays. He had that look like he hated paperwork more than he hated people. He shut the door and said, "Heard your name at the clerk's office." "Yeah," I said. "My wife's making a mess." He tapped a manila folder on the desk, didn't open it. "Keep your head down and your logs clean. You don't want drama reaching the loading dock." "I got it handled," I told him. "I don't care if you're living with 4 women or 2 goats. Just don't be late and don't lie on the delivery slips." "Understood." He nodded, dismissed me with a chin lift, and went back to watching the forklift cam feed like it was a courtroom show. Back at the Mercers, Ray stayed busy. She was doing 3 shifts a week at the thrift store and cleaning 2 houses on Poplar Street for $20 per room. She came home with wind-chapped cheeks and second-hand gloves, always smiling like she'd won something. She never brought up the house, Naomi, or the noise around town. She just kept showing up, steady as sunrise. Then Friday came, cold and brittle. Toby was building a crooked train track on the rug, humming low to himself, when the back door knocked twice, sharp. June opened it and paused like the air had changed. A woman stepped in, late 50s, coat like pressed steel, sharp brown eyes. She looked like Ray around the jaw and didn't smile. "I'm looking for Ray," she said. "Name's Marla, her mother." Ray came in from folding towels, froze mid-step when she saw her. She didn't speak. Her hands twisted the corner of her sweater, The way you do when your mouth wants to move, but your heart says don't. I've heard stories, Marla said, voice flat. Wanted to see the situation for myself. She looked at Toby. He was pressing a wooden train into its track. Marla's eyes didn't linger, like she knew if she stared too long, she'd lose her grip. Something in her face cracked for half a second, then sealed up again. You work at the county clerk's office, right? I asked. She turned to me slowly. I do. I heard your name through filings. Then I heard other things. And now you're here to make sure your grandson isn't living in a tent behind a liquor store, I said, sharper than I meant. June stepped in before it got worse. She handed Marla a mug. We're doing okay here. Bedtime's 8:30, breakfast's hot, no drinking, no nonsense. They've got a room, food, school enrollment already started. Marla looked at June like she was evaluating a nurse's chart. I didn't come to accuse, just to understand. Well, I said, this is the most stable part of Toby's life right now. That's not me bragging. That's just the facts. Ray still hadn't said a word. She stood near the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to sit. Marla finally turned to her. You gonna let me talk to you, or are you just gonna stand there like you don't know me? Ray's voice was rough when it came out. What do you want me to say? Marla took a breath. I want to know he's okay. He's okay, Ray said. Better than he's ever been. The room got quiet. June topped off Marla's mug like it was any other Friday visit. Marla nodded toward Toby. If school paperwork comes through, I can help register him. I know the system. Ray nodded back, a short, stiff movement. Fine. Marla reached into her coat and pulled out a business card. My cell's on the back. I'm not here to fight. She walked toward the door, gave Toby one last glance, and left without waiting to be walked out. The door clicked shut like punctuation. Ray stood there a second longer, then went out to the back stoop and sat down hard. I gave her a few minutes before following. She was crying. Tight, angry bursts she tried to shove down with her sleeve. I don't want her in my head, she said. I've done too much work to get her out. I know, I said. You don't have to explain. She doesn't get to show up with a coat and a clipboard and pretend she's the adult now. You're the adult now, I said. You've been doing the job. She sniffed, nodded, wiped her face. She always makes me feel like I'm 10, even when I'm holding it together. You didn't come apart, I said. You just opened the door. That takes more strength than people think. She didn't thank me. Didn't have to. We sat out there in the cold for a long while. She didn't talk, and I didn't try to fill the silence. Just sat next to her, steady. It took me 58 years to learn how to sit with someone in their pain, without trying to fix it. Turns out it was the only thing that ever worked. By late January, the VFW hall had its parking lot crammed full for the spaghetti fundraiser. Word had spread fast. One of the volunteer firefighters needed shoulder surgery and couldn't lift without pain. The town came out like it always does when someone breaks down, but hasn't quit. I showed up early to haul soda cases and stack folding chairs. The inside smelled like garlic bread, floor wax, and old banners. Every table had a red plastic cloth and a laminated sign with numbers drawn in Sharpie. Ray brought a tray of cornbread from June's recipe, the one with buttermilk and creamed corn. Toby wore a clip-on bow tie and took it upon himself to be the official breadstick runner, holding the basket like it contained gold. The older vets loved him, called him Sir when he passed by and tipped him with quarters and butterscotch candies. Everything buzzed along fine until the air changed near the buffet line. A red coat walked through the door, tight at the waist, shiny buttons, hair done too sharp for a town that didn't care, and I felt the noise dip half a beat. Naomi. She scanned the room like she was looking for a photographer, spotted our table and walked right up like it was hers to walk to. Her heels clicked too loud for the linoleum. Well, she said, dropping her purse on the table. Look at this picture. Family dinner with stolen ingredients. Ray's hand tensed on her water cup. Toby was still mid-delivery, talking to an old guy with a Purple Heart hat. I stood up before Naomi could say more. "Not here," I said. She ignored that completely and turned toward the nearby tables, loud enough to make sure folks in line could hear. "He's still my husband, still my house, but apparently that doesn't stop him from playing house with someone else." "Naomi," I said, firmer now, "if you have something to say, make an appointment like everyone else. Don't do this here." "Oh, I think it belongs here," she said, fake laughing. "You want to skip the process? You skip consequences. That's not how the law works, Rick." She went on about community property, shared assets, and then shifted into victim gear. Said I'd abandoned her while she was in a hard place, that I'd moved in a stranger and her child while still legally married. Her voice climbed an octave every sentence. I took a slow breath and scanned the room, found who I was looking for. "Deputy Sanders," I said, raising a hand. He was standing near the raffle table, eating a breadstick, and looked as surprised as anyone. But he came over quick, wiped his hands on a napkin, and said, "Something I can help with?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Naomi's making a public scene about legal claims she knows are being handled through the proper channels. I'd like her removed from this event before it escalates further." Naomi threw her hands up. "Oh, come on! What is this? Some small-town version of censorship?" "She's escalating personal disputes in a public fundraiser," I said, "and she's been warned before." Sanders gave her a nod, calm as a weatherman. "Ma'am, let's step outside and talk this through." Naomi crossed her arms. "This is harassment. I'm being silenced." I opened my folder, brought it on purpose, and handed Sanders a manila envelope. Inside, copy of the forged loan application, transcript of the audio recording from my kitchen, and a printout from the credit union's fraud report. He scanned the top page, lips tightening into a straight line. Then he looked at Naomi. "Ma'am, you need to leave these folks alone while this is being reviewed. For your own sake," he said evenly. "What you've presented here today may become relevant in court, but it doesn't belong in a community hall full of kids and veterans." She pointed at me, shaking. "He's lying. That audio is fake. You're all letting him manipulate the story because he's charming and I'm—" "Chain of custody is clear," Sanders interrupted, calm but firm. "File was emailed directly to my office. The credit union flagged the loan. We've got process now, not story. You can either participate or obstruct, but not both." Naomi looked around the room, maybe hoping someone would back her up. Nobody did. People might not speak up in small towns, but they read tone better than most. Hers was sharp, shrill, loud. Mine stayed level. That mattered more than anything else. She turned on her heel, made a noise in her throat like a kettle popping off the stove, and pushed through the side exit and left. I sat back down, not shaking, not smug, just tired in a clean way. Lighter in the chest without losing any weight. Toby came back to the table, oblivious to the drama, holding up a breadstick proudly. "This one's extra garlic," he said. "You want it?" "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I do." Ray reached under the table and grabbed my hand. Didn't say anything, just held it like she wasn't waiting for the next fire to start. For once, neither was I. The call came in early February while I was unloading cases at the back dock of Lawson's Market. The county prosecutor's voice was firm, clipped, and didn't waste time. "We've offered your ex-wife a misdemeanor plea on the forged loan," he said. "Restitution in installments. She accepts, or we proceed to felony charges." I asked one question. "Will I get my money back?" "Yes, starting next month. $185 per month until the balance is covered." "Then I don't need a parade," I said. "Just make it clean. No more mess." He agreed. We hung up. I stared at the tailgate of the truck for a minute, let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, and went back to stacking 12 packs of ginger ale like the world hadn't just shifted an inch. A few days later, I got the IRS letter I'd been waiting on. Release of federal tax lien. Official, signed, stamped. I held it like it was glass, took it home and pinned it to Harold's corkboard, right next to a photo of June in her garden and an old postcard from their trip to the Smokies. It felt like a hunting tag for something I'd finally brought down. That same week, I filed the divorce petition at the county clerk. Simple paperwork, no fight. Naomi accepted service without a single text or call. When the decree came in March, I didn't throw a party. I just read it 3 times, folded it up, and placed it in the top drawer of June's old sewing table. I filed a quitclaim on my share of the duplex. Didn't want it anymore. Let her keep the bricks and mold if she needed a trophy. Peace was worth more than the deed. Naomi sent me 3 boxes labeled Rick's Junk, packed with things I hadn't seen since the second Bush administration. An old baseball glove, 2 mugs from my first trucking job, a pair of cufflinks I never wore. Then she texted me asking for her blender. I boxed up the cord, took a photo of it on the porch, and mailed it with tracking. Call it petty, call it what you want. It made me feel better for about 7 minutes, and that was enough. Once the second restitution check cleared, I started looking at places. Found a 2-bedroom rental off Birch Street, nothing fancy. Linoleum floors, cracked driveway, kitchen light that buzzed when it warmed up. But it had a fenced yard, a working lock, and a bathroom where Toby could line up all 12 of his toy cars. Ray didn't say much when I showed her the listing. Just looked at it for a while, then asked, "Can we put both names on the lease?" I nodded. That's the plan. She smiled and did that small tilt of her head that meant yes. We signed papers that Friday. The keys were cold in my hand but felt real. Toby picked his room, smaller one, back of the house. "It's closer to the tree," he said. "I want to see squirrels." Then Derek called. Of course he did, still chasing that quarter-acre granddad left us. This time he opened with, "Look, if you want to be sentimental, fine, buy me out. I'll take $8,200 for my half and walk." I didn't answer right away. That number stung, but it wasn't outrageous. He knew what he was doing. Harold found me on the porch later that day, envelope in hand. "I can loan you $4,000, he said. 2%, you make it matter." I blinked at him. "You serious?" "As rain," he said. "But I don't want to see a gazebo or some dumb statue. I want to see a shed, a garden. Use it." I don't cry much, but my eyes burned, and I had to look away like I was checking the wind. I sold my 4-wheeler I hadn't ridden in years, picked up extra hours doing warehouse cleanup, and stacked every extra penny I could find. Within 30 days, I hit Derek's number. He signed the deed with a twitchy pen and barely looked me in the eye. "You're nuts," he said. "That land's just weeds and wet dirt." "Maybe," I told him, "but now it's mine to decide." That evening I walked the lot. Just me, the trees, and the sound of wind skipping over the tall grass. No big moment, no grand speech, just a plan in my chest. Come April, I'd put in a small shed, maybe a garden for tomatoes and green beans, something I could walk past and know, this part didn't get taken. This part, I planted myself. By the last week of April, the grass in the backyard was patchy but green, and we had just enough space to call it ours. The Birch Street rental wasn't big, but the porch didn't creak when you stepped on it, and the locks worked the first time you turned them. That was more than I could say for half the places I'd lived. I'd found a used grill at a yard sale, $60, surface rust, still lit on the first try, and a wobbly picnic table I tightened twice with an old socket set. Ray brought out paper plates with the red checkered border. June hovered over a bowl of potato salad like it was a science experiment, muttering, "Too much mustard ruins everything." Harold sat back in a folding chair, flannel over his shoulders, knee blanket tucked in. "I'll swing by Saturday," he said. "Help set those corner posts on your granddad's lot. Weather's looking clear." I nodded, tongs in hand. "Bring that level you like, the one you trust more than your doctor." He chuckled and took another sip of iced tea. Toby was out back, riding tight circles in the grass on a small red bike with training wheels. His socks didn't match, and his laughter bounced off the fence like it had never been gone in the first place. Every time he passed by, he'd yell, "Faster!" even when no one was chasing him. Before the burgers were done, I walked inside, grabbed 2 boxes I'd been meaning to send, and added one last thing. A folded page with Naomi's restitution total so far, plus a short note in my handwriting. Please send a forwarding address for the utilities you ran up last winter. I won't cover what I didn't spend. I sealed it, wrote her name across the front, and added the return label with steady hands. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't dramatic. It was what belonged to her going back in her direction, and me keeping what was mine. No more storms under my roof. Mr. Delgado showed up halfway through cleanup with a bag of hot dog buns and a shrug. "Traffic was awful," he said. "This what retirement looks like?" "Feels more like parole," I said, and he laughed. He pulled me aside near the grill and said, "Come summer, I've got a better route for you. Fewer stops, more daylight, pays a little more." I looked at him. "Why now?" "Because you've been quiet, clean, and early 3 weeks straight. Keep it up and I don't care who you live with or how many casseroles your neighbors feed you." "I'll take what keeps the lights on," I said. Right before dessert, Marla knocked at the gate. She held a small potted tomato plant with both hands, dirt under her nails. "This is for Toby," she said. "I thought we could water it once a week. Give him something to grow." Ray met her at the steps, took the plant, and said, "Okay," in a voice I hadn't heard before. It was careful, but not closed off. A door opening, not wide, but enough to step through. We ended the night with paper plates stacked on the counter, and Toby asleep in the lawn chair, still holding half a popsicle. Ray leaned against my shoulder while Harold talked about shed layouts, and June argued about mulch. A month later, I got a letter from the IRS. Case closed. Identity theft resolved. It came with no apology, no check, no drama, just a single page with black ink that meant I was finally off the hook. I didn't lock it away, just slid it into the drawer next to the new lease and the seed packet Toby picked out for his garden. We didn't toast or celebrate. We ate, we laughed, we cleaned up. Ray leaned on my shoulder, and I noticed she wasn't bracing for a hit anymore. As the sun dropped behind the old fence, I thought about the year I was 36. About how close I came to letting one bitter, angry person write the rest of my days for me. I'm 58 now. I didn't win big, but I won honest. I stood up quiet, walked away when I had to, and built a small life where the people at my table want to be there. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who kept dragging you back into their chaos, even when part of you still cared? If this story hit close to home, drop a comment below. Tell us your thoughts, or just say the story was good. It really helps the channel. And if you liked it, please hit like and subscribe. It means a lot to us and takes only one click.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.